As you were telling this story, the story of the Terror Taxi, I was just thinking, wow, this is an excellent professional storyteller. And at the beginning of your career, I mean, or before your career, you already talked about how you were confident. I mean, your middle name is Huge Penis, and you were motivated. But did you already have this sort of natural talent, or is it something that you had to really work to develop?
I think I couldn't really tell you for sure. I would tell you this, that like I always got laughs from my friends and my mother and father, you know, and I definitely, you know, I would dress up in my mom's. Sometimes I'd put on like my mom's high heels and a hat and lipstick, and I would dress up. So I had some desire for show business or whatever, and it wasn't show business. I had desire for attention, I guess. And you know, I did that when I was like 5. I would put on the high heels and prance around with it. And then I kind of, you know, I always got laughs, and so I eventually, you know, I had a rough freshman year in high school, and my sister was like, "Why don't you join the play and you meet a whole bunch of people?" And I'm like, "Play? I'm gonna be on a fucking play." And she goes, "It's a musical," and I'm like, "Oh, fucking musical, right?" And but I did it. I auditioned, and I ended up Scottish Klansman in the play Brigadoon. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of fun. And I met all these people, and we kind of go out there and perform, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. And eventually I fell for it. It was like super fun to do all that stuff. But the storytelling of it all, I have a feeling that storytelling is sort of like being able to sit at a piano and play songs you don't really know. You know, like I think it's like a part of like it's talent, right? It's like, and you get better and better at it once you start to see the mathematical structure of what a story is, right? It's built into the name of television, half-hour television comedy. It's built in sitcom, situation comedy. It's right there. And so you set up the situation and the comedy follows. And that's the truth of all stories. Every single story there is, you set up the situation and the comedy follows. And the great stories are all that. They're all the same thing. And it's true of stand-up acts. It's true of stand-up bits. You set up the situation and then, you know, the comedy follows it. And it's true of movies. See, the first act of the movie is the setup. All the jokes mostly happen in the second act, and then the third, pay it off. It's a story. It's a long story. But novel is the same thing. You set it up, boom, 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 pay it off. So I've gotten better at telling stories for sure, but I bet I was probably at least pretty good when I was younger. I mean, I have friends out here who are great storytellers, and it's the same method, right? They weren't taught the way I was. You know, they didn't learn how to tell stories because they're not writers. They're just people who are funny and tell stories. And you're like, oh, maybe I'm one of those people. Maybe I always was one of those people. Hard to say.
I know that for the most part, though, you didn't have formal education in these things. I think you did Second City, but you didn't go to film school, for instance. And I'm wondering...
I didn't get in.
Right, which says something, doesn't it? But if there's still a through line again to how you develop the skills that you do have, for instance, I mean, with filmmaking or joke writing or screenwriting, and whether or not there are principles that you think might apply to other people who want to develop a creative pursuit.
I mean, it's, you know, the hard part about show business is that it's the levers of how to make it, it's opaque. You know, you can't quite see how to do it. Like, suddenly a movie shows up and you're like, how did that happen? You know, and the way it happened is it started small. You know, always starts small. Like I'll give you an example. Like I was golfing at a friend's birthday party at Lakeside Country Club, and I was on an 80-yard, well, it's called a par 3, whatever, and I hit exactly an 80-yard shot, and it landed next to the hole and sucked this way, left, and went right across the ridge of the hole and didn't go in. Almost a hole in one. Like, wouldn't have been. The caddy was jumping in the air. You know, everyone thought it was a hole in one. The guy behind me, I hear a guy saying, don't go in, don't go in. And I look at him, and it's a birthday boy. I'm like, what do you mean don't go in? And he goes, oh, yeah, right. No, I mean, I want you to get a hole in one, but the problem is at this club, if you get a hole in one, you have to drop your clubs, and a cart comes out and takes the foursome right to the Burbank airport, and there's a jet that we have access to. You fly straight to Las Vegas. And he goes, and then you have like a 4-day golf trip in Vegas. That's great. That would have been great. However, there are 36 other guys at this fucking birthday party, and I was going to have to pay for all of them to go to fucking Vegas with you because that's the right thing to do. And so I was like looking at it going, oh my God, this is about to cost me $40,000 or whatever. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I'm like, that's a funny idea, right? So I was like talking to my friend Kate Angelo, and I was like, you know, here's what happened. Here's the story that happened. And I said, you know, since Caddyshack, there's been there have been 2 great golf movies, in my view. And it's Caddyshack, and I'll put Happy Gilmore up there. And those are the 2 funniest golf movies, but they're also really good golf movies. And I said, to Kate, I'm like, let's make the second funniest golf movie of all time, right? And she goes, which one's the first? I'm like, depends on your generation. That's up to you. But that's how we're going to go walk around Hollywood and pitch it, and everyone will laugh at that part. Oh, second funniest. Okay. They make you guess which one you think is the funniest. And I'm like, and we'll open it with this thing where this guy gets a hole in one. But the big thing that all golfers want is they want to go play golf at St. Andrews in Scotland. That's the mecca of golf. That's where golf was created. Scotland, by sheep herders who were hitting rocks across the ground because they were bored herding sheep, and they said, oh, let's play this, made up a game with rocks and sticks, and it became golf. And I was like, this is the wish fulfillment thing of golf, is to go to Scotland. So instead, when this guy hits a hole in one, instead of going to Vegas, because it's on a certain day where the founder of the club was a Scottish guy, the old man of Carnoustie, this day, because he got a hole in one this day, the trip is to Scotland for a week to play the 8 greatest Scottish courses, and he gets to take 3 guys with him. And so everyone's like, yeah, we're going to Scotland. Now, in order to make a good R-rated movie, you need, in my view, salty language, you need sex, and you need, some version of alcohol and drugs. And I said, you could send a married guy over there and do the salty language and the drugs and booze. But the sex gets hard because the audience is like, wow, we don't really like him cheating on his wife, right? So we build in mechanisms to protect the character. And I'm like, okay, what if this is the day he gets a hole in the day before he's about to sign his divorce papers with his wife, right? And so we're going to send him to Scotland as a single man. And so we can do some sex over there. So we'll have sex, drugs, booze, and salty language. These are the minimums we require for an R-rated movie. And it'll be wish fulfillment, Scotland, da-da-da. And my friend Kate Angelo, who I wrote the movie with, she goes, how about this? There's a settlement for the divorce tomorrow. The 2 lawyers are meeting with the couple, and the last item on the split list is this trip, because now it's an asset. So the wife's like, I want half the fucking trip. So now the wife is going and her buddy are flying to the UK to go to England to fuck guys, while he and one guy get to go to Scotland, and they meet up with a British guy and a Scottish guy who they know, and then it turns into like a whole, like The Hangover kind of like, but the woman's over there and the guy's over there, and they're hooking up, and then they eventually get back together, and the audience say, "Oh, they're back together," and it's like it's a way you try to create a thing. There are elements you need: sex, drugs, salty language, all that. So you're like, those are given. We have to have those. But how do we get to there? How do we tell this story and keep those stuff? And so then you kind of, you start weaving it. And we wrote a script, and now we're going to try to make it. It's storytelling at its core. You start with something funny, something interesting, something unique, and then you go from there. The first thing is the compelling thing, the reason why. It's like, I want to tell a story about golf, okay, but this hole-in-one thing is intriguing, okay, and now we'll make, then you just kind of, and if you really look at all the movies, they're all built into there's a 3-act structure that's hidden in the movie business. And it's basically, in the first act, you meet the character and you find out what they want in life. Okay. So in this movie, this guy who gets the hole-in-one, he's playing golf with his buddies, and he goes, and his friend is single, and his friend's on Raya and Tinder, whatever, and he's hooking up. And this guy who's about to be single again is like, man, I want some strange again. I want to fucking get a new, I want to just be with a new woman. My God, that's what I fucking want. That's what I want. And I want to rage, and I want to party. I want to fucking go nuts. I want to go for it. I can't wait to be single again. And then, he becomes, so that's the first act. You find out what he wants, and then you also find out what the story might be. Oh, he's going to go to Scotland. Okay, that's the end. That's the first act. And then in Scotland, you see him play golf. You see him hook up, and then they get embroiled in a basically a cocaine distribution ring that Brian Cox is he's the bad guy in the movie, he's a Scottish guy, and there's a cocaine ring, and so they get embroiled in this whole thing, and the wife comes back in, and you're like, oh no, and then at the third act, at the end of the second act, you're watching this character, you're like, there's no way he's going to really like get out of this. He's too deep. He's going to die. Something's going to happen. But in the third act, somehow he pulls it all together and saves the day and wins, right? And that's what all these movies are.